Everybody loves a good movie. Lights, camera, action. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Hello everybody, my name's Steve, I'm the British Railroader and welcome to my model railroad room for a slightly different episode of the British Railroader. So I have been doing a little bit of tidying up in the model railroad room. You very rarely see this bit under here because it's very untidy, and Mrs. British Railroader has asked that I try not to feature it in any of my videos where possible. Now, as I was sorting through, I realised that I had a whole box full of DVDs, most of them railway related, but some of them, I've got Blade Runner, I've got the Clive James collection, I've got Hong Kong tramways in the 1980s. I've got loads of DVDs that I need to sort through and then put some of them in long-term storage. But it occurred to me that within this box of DVDs were some of my favourite railway-related movies. So these are movies that may not just be about the railroad or the railway, but are set on or around railways. So I thought it might just be a little bit fun to have a look at my top 5. Okay, so in 5th place is the 1976 disaster movie, The Cassandra Crossing. This is a bit of a classic, so it is a typical Hollywood disaster movie. It's star-studded lineup: Richard Harris, Sophia Loren, Burt Lancaster, Martin Sheen, Ava Gardner, O.J. Simpson, and the great Lionel Stander as Max the conductor. He always played somebody called Max. I'm pretty sure that in Heart to Heart, his character was called Max. This film was panned by the critics, and it is pretty much, as a film, it's a bit awful. But if you like railways, it's got some beautiful shots of European trains. The train depicted in it was meant to be going from Geneva to Stockholm. It's made up of a lot of Swiss carriages. It's made up of a lot of, there's a couple of wagon-lit in there, some of the older wagon-lit. It's actually not a bad movie. And it's the kind of movie that if you're bored on a Sunday afternoon, it's well worth watching. For those of you who haven't seen it, the whole premise behind this is you've got this international train full of basically Hollywood's greats. And that there is introduced onto the train somebody who has broken into a top secret germ warfare lab, stolen the germ, has become infected and starts infecting the passengers. And basically the World Health Organization, led by the nasty Burt Lancaster as somebody from the US, the train is diverted to a place, an old concentration camp, to keep these passengers isolated. But to get there, it has to cross the eponymous Cassandra Crossing, which is meant to be a railway bridge that hasn't been used since just after the Second World War, and everybody knows that it's going to plunge to its death as it goes over. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but bear in mind that the main characters all survive, because this is a 1970s US Hollywood-style disaster movie. Rubbish film, but I really quite like it. Now, my number 4 and number 3 choices could go either way. They could be in both places, but I put this one at number 4. So this is the Titfield Thunderbolt. This is a classic Ealing comedy from 1953. Now, some of my American viewers won't have heard of a lot of the people that are in this. People like Stanley Holloway, George Ralph, John Gregson, even features Sid James in an early role. To us Brits, Sid James is a bit of a comedy legend, so it's quite interesting seeing him before he was famous. So what was interesting about this particular movie is it actually predated the British Rail line closures by about 10 years. So it almost was trying to predict the future. So it's about a small branch line that's slated for closure by British Railways, and the locals basically club together to take it over. But there's a nasty bus company owner in the mix who wants to sabotage everything. And they end up having to use a locomotive from a museum. Now, the locomotive they used, the eponymous Titfield Thunderbolt, was actually the 1838 built Lion locomotive from the Stockton and Darlington Railway. They used the actual loco. They actually brought it back to steam to actually run it on the film. It's a wonderful film. It is a typical post-war gentle British comedy. It's beautifully shot. It is in colour, which is unusual for the 1950s, but it makes it even nicer. This is an absolutely great film, and if you haven't seen it before, take a little look at it. If you like the train, Rapido in the UK actually made Titfield Thunderbolt sets, so you can actually have the train, if you really wanted it, running on your layout. The next spot, number 3, goes to this film, The Station Agent from 2003. This stars Peter Dinklage, Patricia Carson, Bobby Cannavale, and Michelle Williams, and it is a little gentle comedy drama. I seem to go for comedy dramas. But this is the first one in my top 5 that's set in the US. And it's about a guy, played by Peter Dinklage, who's a bit of an outsider, who works in a model shop. And when the model shop owner dies, he inherits from him an old railway depot. Now, the depot itself is actually Newfoundland, in Newfoundland in New Jersey, and is actually on the New York, Susquehanna and Western Railroad, and that's featured in this. There is some lovely railway shots in here. Again, this isn't a railway film, but it's a film that's set around a railroad. It's a lovely film. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. Okay, we've reached the number 2 spot, and my number 2, some people will argue, is potentially one of the best railway-based movies of all time. I am, of course, talking about the 1974 Murder on the Orient Express. Now, this was recently remade by Kenneth Branagh. I do have both versions, but this is by far the better version. So, it stars Albert Finney as Hercule Poirot, and then basically the whole of Hollywood is on this train. Okay, so from Lauren Bacall to Ingrid Bergman, Sean Connery, Anthony Perkins. I could go on and on and on, but I won't. See this film. If you want to see possibly the definitive version of Murder on the Orient Express in movie format, this is the one that you want to see. Now, apparently, this is one of only 2 movies that Agatha Christie herself felt were good representations of her work. Her only criticism of this movie was she didn't feel Albert Finney's moustache was as big and luxuriant as she imagined it to be in the books. That was her only criticism. She didn't criticise the ever so slight changes to character names or plot, which kind of were made to make it work as a movie. But this is fantastic. There's some great exterior shots of real Wagon-Lee coaches. I think there's an ex-SNCF Chaparral Nord Pacific. I could be wrong about that, but the steam engine in it was, it's a real steam engine. Some of the coaches, interestingly, a few years later were sold off at auction and were bought by James Sherwood, who inaugurated the Venice Samplon Orient Express in the 1980s. Obviously, the interiors were shot in a soundstage, but this is a great movie. I mean, it got rave reviews and it still stands up today as a really, really good movie. It won, Ingrid Bergman won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in this movie. If you're a train lover and you love films that are set on trains, come and take a look at the 1974 version of Murder on the Orient Express. The one with Albert Finney, directed by Sidney Lumet. Kenneth Branagh one is good, but this one is absolutely better. Okay, we have reached the #1 spot. Now, I'm not saying this is the best railway-related movie of all times. I've said about Murder on the Orient Express, which is my second favourite, and it's probably one of the best railway-related movies around. But for me, this movie is something that I keep coming back to time and time again. Okay, my favourite movie is Unstoppable. So this is a 2010 movie. It stars Denzel Washington with Chris Pine and Rosario Dawson. It's based on a real life event, based on the CSX 8888 incident, which was a runaway train that went, I can't remember where it came from. I think it went from north to south. It was known as the Crazy Eights. It's quite interesting that I started with a disaster movie, which was a bit naff, and ended with a disaster movie, which has got some pretty good reviews. What I love about this is, number one, it's an American railroad-based movie. And as you know, I love American railroads. It features some great locomotives. What I love is that the bad guys in this are GE AC 4400 WCs. Yes, GEs are the bad guys. The good guys are the EMDs, and specifically an EMD SD40-2 saves the day. You know, you could have taken out Denzel Washington, Chris Pine, and Rosario Dawson, and all of the other actors. This could have been a movie just about the fact that an SD40 saves Pennsylvania from disaster. It's a fun movie. It's a great movie. It's the kind of movie that you sit down one afternoon with a bucket of popcorn and you just get right into it. It's got high points. It's got low points. I get choked up at various bits. I know how this ends. I've watched it so many times, but it still gets me excited. It is a wonderful movie, and most importantly, an SD40-2 saves the day. So for me, this is my favourite railway related movie. Okay, so that's it for this video. These are my choices of video. There are loads of movies out there that are railway related, and I haven't seen all of them. And I'm sure that you guys will have your own favourites. And if you do, post them in the comments below, because I'd love to know what your favourite movies are, because you might have seen movies that I've never seen, and I think it would be great to be able to look at them. So either post them below or send me an email to this email address right here. And again, if you have any comments, queries, questions, you know what to do. But as I said, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's been a bit unusual, a bit different from what I normally do, but sometimes you want to mix it up a little bit. If you enjoyed the movie, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, please consider clicking that subscribe button. And when you do, and the bell comes up, hit it, press all, and you will be notified of all my videos as they come out. Okay, so that's it from me. I am going to step into my limousine and be taken off to my next Hollywood party. So this is the British Railroader saying so long from my model railroad run. Bye-bye.